So I held her hair back while she was throwing up. And at one point she goes, "Mm," and she realized I was standing behind her and she goes, "You were really funny." Before we get started, last night I had a glass of wine, which at 4'6", a whole glass of wine is got to be the equivalent of like 27 glasses of wine. And I have a thing on my phone that says, a note on my phone that says video ideas. And I opened it this morning, and apparently with one glass of wine in me, this is what I wrote as a video idea. Video idea. Pam has Tourette's and goes axe throwing. That's like we're going to file that under not going to happen. Might happen. Might happen. Might happen. Hi. Ooh, little Tourette's to get us started. So y'all know I'm a stand-up comic. I also tour with that one-woman show. I honestly do that a lot more these days, but I'm always on stage. I'm on stage in non-COVID times every day. Every day. When I'm in New York and I'm just like jumping around the city, often more than once a night. But I'm pretty much, unless it's a full travel day, I'm on stage every day. And so I, over the past few years, have had some awful shows, both comedy and speaking gigs, some of which were my fault, some of which were not. And I'm usually pretty honest on which one it is. So I thought I'd tell you some of my worst shows I've ever done as a stand-up comedian. I made a list. There are so many, but these I think were my 3 favorites. So my very first favorite is I was doing a club in the Midwest. I will not say what club. Oh, it's not open anymore. I still won't say. I was doing a club in the Midwest, and this club did a promotion for bachelorette parties. So there were like 500 people in the audience, but like a good majority of them were just really drunk women celebrating a bachelorette party. And I don't know if you know this, but women at a bachelorette party don't just want to go to a comedy show. They want to be involved. They want to be included. They want to be part of the experience. So I don't know that this was, listen, you might hear this. I loved this. I thought this was hilarious. It was painful. I couldn't get through any of my comedy. So I get on stage and I'm starting, and 2 of the women get up on stage with me. They just stand there, and then they start using the microphone in inappropriate ways. And I could not continue with my joke, so I just tried to do crowd work with them on stage with me. And yes, the club should have absolutely removed them from the stage, but also we thought it might be funny. I think they thought it might be funny. And it could have been funny if these women had not been so gone, just obliterated. And I tried to ask them questions and do some crowd work, and I quickly believed that I could not understand a word that came out of either of their mouths. So it was like this. It was like this. Which one of you is the bride? Like that was the equivalent. That's what it seemed like, at least. I was probably not that bad, but it was pretty rough. And I did get through my set. I didn't get through my jokes, but I got through my time on stage. These 2 women hung out at one point, and I wish I could find a photo. They just didn't leave. At one point, one of them just laid down at my feet like a cat, and the other one just sat on the stool that was there for the comic. And I was like, okay, so then I did the rest of the set making fun of them. That felt like my next best option. Do you all agree? Oh, but after my set, so at this specific club, there was a green room, but there was no bathroom for the comics, so I had to go in the normal bathroom, and I had to pee. Let me be a lady. I had to use the ladies' room after my set, so I went into the bathroom, and 2 of the girls from the bachelorette party were in the bathroom, and one of them was puking, and the other one was too inebriated to support her, so I held her hair back while she was throwing up, and at one point she goes, and she realized I was standing behind her, and she goes, "You were really funny." It was great. It was great. It was great. It was great. Another fun show. It was a theater that seats probably a few hundred, and there were 3 shows on Saturday nights. There was an early, an early show, a normal time show, and then like the late one that started at like 11:30 or 12. And this was the early one. Nobody was at it. The next 2 were sold out, but the early one, like, nobody wants to see a 6, 7 p.m. comedy show. So nobody was there. So, not nobody. There were 3 people in the audience. 3 people. And I think I was third on the lineup. I was not the headliner. I think there were 5 comics on the show. But I was like somewhere in the middle. So the 3 people at least are good audience members. Like, they're laughing loudly. We're having a good time, whatever. Then I get brought to the stage. And as they're saying my name, I hear one of the audience members go, I'm going to go smoke. And the other 2 go, oh, yeah. And all 3 of them left as I'm walking to the stage. And I get onto the stage and I'm like, do I do a set? Like, what do I do? So I did, because I was paid to. So I just did my set for the wait staff. They had already heard my set. I had been there all week. It was, thank God there were people at the next 2 shows, because that first one was rough. Let's see here. I have other fun notes of bad shows. I did a show. So many of these were Midwest shows. And I'm from the Midwest originally, so I love my Midwest crowds, but the next 2 are also Midwest shows. This first one, I often talk about being 4'6", Jewish, and having Tourette's. A lot of my comedy comes from that. Not laughing at it, but that's my point of view. I am Jewish, I'm 4'6", and I have a significant amount of Tourette's syndrome. And one night, when my first joke in the Midwest started by saying, so I'm Jewish, and somebody yelled, what's a Jew? And then the rest of the audience was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, that's not going to go well. So it actually did, but I had to do a quick shift. I had to quickly explain, and they weren't being mean. They were just truly had never met one. I realized I had a few options. I could either just lie, and they weren't being mean. They were curious, but I could have been the one that was like, yeah, no, we have horns and a tail. But I didn't. I kept it classy. I don't even remember what I said, but I remember thinking, move on. And then let's see, my final one. Actually, my final one was in New York. And at this show, I was hosting. And it was going really well, except there were 2 people in the back of it was a bar show. And I don't host often because I screw up every name. Even if I know the person, I will get on stage and their name will go out. And some of that's anxiety. I once was paid to host. It was a D-list comedian. You wouldn't even know him if I said his name. But I was hosting and I screwed up his credits where you tell everyone about who he is. And he took me out back after the show, and I thought he was going to hit me. He yelled at me so much. So I've had a little anxiety ever since then with hosting. So I try not to do it too often, but it's good for me to get over anything I'm anxious about. But I was hosting. And 2 guys in the back of the bar decided now is a good time to fight. So I'm hosting, and there's a brawl happening, a full-on brawl with cops being called. And I just kept going. I made a few jokes about it, but it lasted long enough that I was like, I'm out of funny. I'm out of funny, and I just have to get the audience through this, however long it takes for the cops to come. Once the cops arrived, I had a whole new set of fun material to work with because there were some hot cops. But in the moment, challenging. But I think I've realized throughout my years that I love a good challenge. One time in my one-woman show, I was performing for, it was a community of people with disabilities, which usually are my favorite communities to perform for, and us, one of them. I usually love doing things like that. But there was a young man who, I don't know what his diagnosis was, but he just joined me on stage, and I was like, okay. And he became my helper for a good chunk of my one-woman show, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It's really hard to throw me off. I've dealt with fire alarms going off in the middle of my set. I've dealt with fights, people throwing up. I've dealt with people heckling me, usually nicely. I don't think I've ever been mean heckled. Once I did a New Year's show, which was a 6-hour open bar, and I performed hour 4. And so everyone they had had a good time. And there was a woman who was heckling me, but positively. So I would say something and she'd be like, I love you. I love her. I love you. And I just could not get through my jokes. Heckling doesn't always mean mean. So it's pretty hard to shake me, and I love these crazy stories, and when they happen, I think to myself, yep, okay, let's add that to the list. There are more. I'll maybe do another video of this. Actually, I'll do one more. Here's another one. If you know me in real life, you know that I am so professional. I treat this like a business. The one thing that's really hard for me is if right before I go on stage, you tell me there's something off limits. If right before I walk on stage, you say to me something like, cool, and this is in comedy. Cool, cool, cool. Whatever you do, just like don't mention this. Because then what happens is I probably would have never mentioned it. But all my brain says is like, big red button, big red button, big red button. Don't press it, don't press it, press it, press it. Press the button, Pam. Press it. It's big and red. It's shiny. Do it. And I did a show once in New Jersey, and literally as I was walking on the stage, the guy who booked me pulled me back and said, oh, nothing political or else I will come drag you off that stage and kick you out. Here's the thing. I don't even have political humor. But the minute he said that, my brain was like, let's write all political jokes and do all political crowd work. It was a whole fight with my brain on stage. I didn't do any of it. I was successful, but I was not as funny as I could have been because my brain was like, do it, do it, do it, see what happens. I'm professional, but I'm also filled with ADD, actually diagnosed. So anyway, those are a few stories of some of my worst, hardest, not worst. I love it. God, that must be why I'm a comic. I am messed up. But some of my hardest shows, there are more. If you want to hear more, or if you want to hear more about performing, drop me a question. If you have like a specific question for me, I have the video, like put APA, Ask Pam Anything, and I'll know it's for my APA's videos, my Ask Pam Anything videos, and I'll give you a shout out if I answer it. As always, stay weird. You do you. I've realized that you do you is actually kind of usually mean. People are like, you do you, like condescending, but I have decided, no, I love it. But let's say it is like a nice thing, like you do you. Yeah. So anyway, keep weird, stay weird. Thanks for hanging out with me. Love you all.